For your time, I will thank. Subscribe you can. More art, you will see. Yes.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Before we get into actually talking about the drawing and everything, I wanted to quickly give a shout out to Jonathan. Thank you for that awesome Yoda impression. I heard it for the first time in one of James's live streams, I think, and oh, so good. Really happy to have that in the video. So anyway guys, in this video, as you can see, I am coloring my Yoda piece now. This was sort of my most ambitious coloring that I've done in a while. I think the last time I fully colored a piece was my Master Chief drawing, and that was a while ago. This time I wanted to go through and actually produce something a little bit more complex, going with some textures later on, and plus I added a bit more of an elaborate background, so that's why this piece was a little bit daunting, but at the same time I was really looking forward to actually getting into coloring this. So this stage here is called flatting. Now all this really involves is going through and separating every individual part of the piece. So I'm picking colors that might not be 100% accurate to what they're going to look like at the end, but it's just so I can select different areas without, wrecking other parts of it. So I went through, picked a skin tone that was completely not what the final one will be, and then I went through and also picked the base colors for everything else on the piece, and I will go through and modify all of these later on. But the flatting stage took forever. It took ages to do, and it's a really time consuming, sort of boring process, but it's really rewarding when you see the final piece all flatted, because then you get into the fun stuff. But the flatting, honestly, that was the longest part of this, and definitely the most tedious. It's so frustrating to do, because you'll sort of get to a point where you forget if you're deselecting or selecting what area, and you got to fill it in parts at a time just so your eyes don't get too confused. It's a long process. So like I said, when I was drawing this piece, I had the colors in mind right from the beginning. I knew that I wanted to color the piece as I was working on it. I didn't just want to have it black and white and add color later. I went into this from the beginning with the intention to color it, and I'm pretty happy with how the colors actually came out on this. So you can see I went through and I wanted it to have a really sort of desaturated, sort of dull tone, but I'm gonna use some contrast later on with some sunlight peering through to combat that, and I think that contrast is gonna actually look pretty cool. But yeah, I went through and tried to separate the trees that are in the background from the trees that are in the foreground, and so I made them a little bit more desaturated. And what I'm going to do is, when I start to add in the later colors, so after I've done the flats, I'll go through and add mist and stuff to try and separate the background from the foreground. So the whole time I'm just messing with different versions of the colors, and I made a mistake because I changed the levels of the background while I was still in the flat layer. I should have made a new layer on top and then started changing the levels, but it didn't really affect the final piece, I don't think. So you can see here, now I'm adding in the shadow tones to Yoda. So I went through, I sort of finalized the skin color, what I wanted it to look like. Then I went through and started painting in the shadow tones. I didn't go too nuts or too dark. I sort of kept the colors basically the same, but I probably added a little bit more blue to them and then made them a bit darker. Now you can see that I'm starting to add the mist in the background. I'm going through, still sort of trying to play with how I want it to look. This is where I realized I added the mist onto the wrong layer. I should have separated it again, but I didn't. But I went through here and ended up fixing it all. This took ages. This took a really long time to do because I was still trying to learn how to do things, but I'm pretty happy with how it came out. Here I'm adding in the mist into the midground, and to do this I had to select Yoda and separate him from that midground so that I could paint the mist behind him, and then go through and add that in there, and then just it's a long process, but you can see here I'm adding some mist sort of into the midground of the piece, so it's behind Yoda but in front of those back trees. I changed the color a little bit from the background mist, but not too much. And here I'm adding in the sun rays, and I'm really happy with how these came out. It added this whole new element to the piece, and when I was painting it in, I wasn't really sure of the look, but then when I hid the layer and looked at how it really brought things out, I was really happy with how it looked. And now I'm adding in the shadows and the highlights to his robes, and this part here was really like new to me. I was actually going through and adding in the textures to his robes, and I'm really happy with the final result. So anyway guys, there it is. There is Yoda all done, and I am really happy with how this came out. Like, I'm not the best colorist yet, but I'm like, this is way better than anything I've done before, and really happy with it. Like, I did try to do a lot of new things with this. I went through and first time ever playing with textures in Photoshop and adding textures into like the actual colored drawing. I wanted to do that before, and it was a good practice because I'm going to be doing a lot of that with my Transformers drawing. So yeah, really happy with how this one came out. So let me know what other drawings like this you guys would like to see, like what other characters you'd like to see me draw in this style with a pretty detailed, fully penciled and inked piece, but then going back over the top with some colors. I wouldn't want to go more detailed than this because this was like a good sort of time frame. It took me sort of maybe 2 to 3 hours to actually draw the piece, and then maybe 4 hours in coloring, and then most of that is just flatting, to be honest with you. Like, the flatting just took forever. But anyway guys, thank you for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.